everyone, thank you for tuning in. I am Kaylee Batesman, the content director at She Can Code, and today we're discussing women in gaming. Last year, it was reported that women accounted for 48% of gamers in the United States. Despite this, the gaming industry is still very much male-dominated, and games have been designed with men in mind for a long time. While the tide may be slowly turning, shouldn't women have more input and representation in the creative process? Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Jacki Vause, founder and CEO of Dimoso PR, to dive into this topic a little deeper. Welcome, Jacki.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We actually haven't spoke about this before on the podcast, so we're excited to have you on. Can we start with a little bit of background about yourself, please?
Absolutely. Knowing that this is a broader audience than just gaming, it's good to say that I did actually start my career in technology and in technology publishing. So it was a sort of weird segue. I wanted to be, the sort of local hero in terms of the actor in me. And I did drama and theatre studies at university, but found when I arrived at university, I was in the same class as Mark Strong and saw that real acting royalty was there, and decided I would be much better off behind the scenes. So I specialised in sound and lighting, and that really sort of sparked my enthusiasm and interest in tech. I mean, in those days, lighting boards and sound boards were all like dials and sweeping switches and all that kind of thing, but and not like they are today, which is all automated and beautifully timed and everything else. You really were expected to just operate things like the old you remember the old telephone keypad, the old telephone exchanges with all the leads and the plugs and stuff like that. It's very like that. But it did spark my enthusiasm for technology. And when I sort of left university as a bright-eyed graduate, I thought to myself, brilliant, I can get into the theatre and do sound and lighting. And that really didn't happen, because that was the very most male-dominated industry you've ever come across. And I was told quite impolitely that because I would be, in commas, and you can cut this and edit this if you like, but on the blob once a month, I wasn't very useful to a gaffer in theatre land. Very much so, very against women. It was really interesting. It was the kind of interview you would go to, and you'd have to show your hands, and your hands would have to be black from rigging lanterns where all the metal chips had got into your hands. And if you showed your hands and you didn't have black hands, you'd never even get to question answer stage. But once they looked at my hands and established that I was indeed a woman, I really didn't get any jobs. So I tried in vain to get a job in the theatre in lighting and sound, and then sort of reluctantly plodded my way around a graduate recruitment fair and ended up at a technology publishers called VNU. That stood for United Dutch Publishing, and I worked on titles like Micro Decision, What Micro, and that was before PCs. This is really showing my age. So we're talking about mini and mainframe and micro computers. And then at the advent of Windows, I actually left that publishing company, and I ended up working in software, selling software programs via a computer dealer at the time called Roderick Manhattan. And I spent the next 5 years running up and down the coasts of America, sourcing software programs to bring over to UK and Europe and sell and distribute over here. So my sort of foundations in tech were very, really good. And I learned PR from being at that first company, because I wasn't taught PR. I didn't go to a college and learn PR. I actually just phoned up my mates who were on the publications that I used to work on and say, hello, please could you write a review on this software program? And that's what really got me into PR. And then when I left that company, I wanted to set up a company of my own. And I decided that I wanted to concentrate on PR, and I wanted to concentrate on PR in technology companies. And so with my little startup, I was probably one of the first Web 2 agencies to really come to the fore. We ended up growing that company to be enormous. It's called Flapjack. And we had offices on Gloucester Place, and we, had the chandeliers and the PAs and the private memberships, at, all that sort of stuff. And then unfortunately lost it all in the web crash, and thereafter, very soon after 9/11, because of all our assets were tied up in property, and property took a massive crash, and I had to sell that company in a fire sale. But I've seen the evolution of tech go from very raw software, Windows software programs and games, through to really sophisticated platforms and e-commerce systems and payment systems and everything else. And I even learned to network my own office, partition hard drives, build computers. So yeah, so I am a bit of a techie at heart.
Yeah, well, that's one of the most interesting routes I think we've heard so far into the industry. How did you get into gaming though? Did you see a gap in the market there, and you thought that's something we're going to go for as a company?
I did. It was really interesting. So after that big crash, and after essentially losing my first company, I was headhunted to work for a really large American PR agency called Peppercom to set up their European head office. And that was in hindsight, it was a really lucky break. I mean, I wanted to see whether I was actually any good at PR, because I was self-taught, and I wanted to see if I could work for this very large company and hold my own. And luckily I did, because I worked with them for 10 years. And I was very lucky in the sense that I worked with huge companies then, reporting into people like Beth Comstock at GE, working with AT&T, Avaya, Panasonic, Siemens, like pretty much every large tech name that you could come across. And that was a real, eye opener. And big company PR is very different to small company PR. And still, that was all tech. And when I'm getting to the point of games, I used to play Network Doom when I was back at my previous company, and we didn't have much chance of doing that with the big American company. But I was a great lover of games, and when I sort of decided to make my move away from that large American company, one of the things I wanted to do was really focus on mobile tech. So this brings us sort of full circle back to games, because mobile was very early then. What we take for granted as smartphones now really were in their first existence. The Nokia was really the first phone that had the Snake game on it. Yes. And so apps and games weren't really there yet when I first started up Dimoso. But the smartphones were coming, and they were the actual hardware that could house these games was coming. And that was my opportunity to get back into games. And the first ever apps were really games. I thought we'd be working, when I set up Dimoso, which stands for Digital Mobile Social, I took a big risk even in the name, because mobile tech wasn't really anything that was recognized. So when I set up Dimoso, one of the things I thought we would be doing would be apps and back-end sort of engineering systems and that kind of thing, development platforms, analytics platforms. That was the sort of thing I thought we'd be doing. I was so wrong. The first people that came to us were apps developers and games developers. And the interesting thing was that all the big console games companies and all the PC games companies had seen this opportunity in mobile, and we're trying to literally copy and paste their games from console and PC onto mobile. And luckily, because we were sort of right at the start of mobile, we spent a lot of time advising people on a mobile first mentality before you even got into the design of the game. So a lot of games that would work on a PC and work on a big screen and didn't need to be taken around with the user were thought of designed in a different way. So we spent a lot of time working with Codemasters, Jagex, Miniclip, and a lot of the sort of bigger publishers to kind of help them bring their first games to light. So we were more than a PR agency. We were consultants. We were go-to-market agents. And we've very much kept that DNA with us as we've sort of gone through the games industry. So that's how I got into games.
Mm. And I mean, you mentioned there's so many different things there about, you know, being consultants and bringing games to life. And it sounds like a very creative industry where, you know, the world is your oyster and you can try lots of new things. What is there to love about a career in gaming?
Keeps you young.
Yes.
The only industry that keeps you young. I think you keep learning in everyday life. Every day is a school day. It doesn't matter what you do, you're always learning something, whether it's about yourself or other people or things. But the thing about technology and the thing about games, particularly because games is such a competitive space, and the interesting thing is games were the first apps. So a lot of apps that have come along after games have actually learned so much about their design, their infrastructure, their monetization from the games industry. And the games industry is always pioneering, very collaborative industry. And I think the nature of its collaborative nature really helps the innovation that happens. You see even the biggest competitors working together on new tech that's going to help their games get better. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is it keeps me young. I see so much innovation at the moment. I'm working in Web3. I'm working with obviously NFTs and blockchain. I'm working with AI and lots of machine learning. I mean, it's phenomenal, the sort of stuff that you find. I'm the coolest mum in my son's school, because, you know, not only am I working with all of these amazing technologies and games, but I'm also working with influencers and, you know, and celebrities and people like that who are trying to access the new world of Web3. People like, I mean, you probably will speak to Kelly Vero soon. She's a bit of a goddess of Web3 in the metaverse. But, you know, she's consulting with people like David Beckham and Nikki Butt and all these big names, Paloma Picasso, who are all looking at Web3, NFTs, the metaverse as a new space where they can bring their brands. And so I'm really lucky I'm at that intersection of entertainment, of technology, and of learning. So yeah, it's just the most amazing industry to be in.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody that's working in the industry, you obviously are fully aware of that. But those on the outside, do you think there's still a stigma around a career in gaming? Is it still one of those careers that is kind of, well, that's not a very sensible route to take, I should do something else, which is a real shame, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the games industry, it's parents of my age who, not necessarily teachers and career people, I think they're coming around to understanding the importance of this industry. But I think parents see it as something fickle, something in many ways sometimes even bad. You know, there's lots of negativity around children socializing on their games, and a lot of negativity about how games sort of drag a child away from their schoolwork or playing outside or whatever that can be. And so I think games are seen as very, what's the word, not irrelevant, but a nice to have, not a must have, and not a serious career. And it couldn't be further from the truth how necessary games are in our lives. And we use games to learn. We use games for everything we do. We use games to attract a mate. We use games all the time. Games are part of humanity. And, you know, just because video games are a very more easily presentable format and more easily consumed, I think they're seen as something that's not necessarily a positive force. But I totally believe that they are more for the force of good than for bad. And it's like with anything, it's how you use a gun, it's how you use anything, is whether it goes wrong for you, is bad for you. In terms of careers, oh my God, I was speaking to this, I do a lot of mentoring, and I was speaking to a group of young girls from University of North Carolina, and they were all studying PR and journalism. And I was trying to explain to them that journalism is really changing now in these more technical times. I mean, the day of the journalist who can offer commentary and opinion is long gone. It's all news analysis, very sort of 24/7 news culture. And people have to learn to write to that and learn to research quickly. And it's a very, very different world. And I was saying to them, why don't you, take these skills and bring them into the games industry? Use your skills in terms of writing narratives, but, you have storytelling, you have design, you have PR and marketing, you have finance. There are all these other things that are in the games industry, in any kind of tech industry. But most important, you can code. You can learn to code. It's so easy now with the tools. Even I can code with the tools that we have at our disposal. I've just launched a UGC metaverse coming from Unity. And for those who don't know, Unity is the biggest games development platform for developers and programs in the world. And they have 3 of their most senior guys left that company to set up this UGC metaverse called Yahaha. And what Yahaha has at its heart is what I call the little black box, which is like a baby Unity development platform where you could just go in with pretty much no coding experience at all and create worlds, create things and create worlds. It's all coming to us now. The tools are becoming that much easier to use. And if you've got an imagination, if you've got creativity, you can code, you can build, you can make any kind of a game. It's there. And particularly for girls who kind of see computer science as something for boys, and sometimes see computer games as something for boys. It's a world that's really shockingly lacking in female bodies, but it's changing. And there's a huge passion and advocacy in our industry, in the games industry, for women to come through the games industry.
Yeah, I think there's that stereotype as well, isn't it? But I mean, whether you're male or female, to be honest, when thinking about careers in gaming, if you can't draw or you're not massively creative, then you think to yourself, that's it, I can't be in gaming, because as you mentioned, the video gaming industry is the one that we think of, and that's the one where we think of you have to know how to draw and be very arty, and if I can't do that, I'm not going to attempt to go into the industry. But you mentioned so many roles there that are available in gaming.
So many roles. There's, for example, the way a lot of games are monetized, it used to be that you had to buy a game. You pay $1.99 in the Apple Store and you download your game and you play your game. Now, most games are free, and the way they monetize is by playing ads and stuff like that, or through in-app purchases. So you buy yourself a new life, or you buy yourself some more oxygen or boosters or whatever. Now, the roles in that side of things are fascinating, because they're all about analysis of trends. They're all about, they call it live ops, basically. You can see your cohorts, your silos of players. You can see what they react to. You can see what they're enjoying. You can adapt your game to respond to that. You can put purchases in that they might buy. It's just the analytics, the ad monetization. And then you've got ad networks, who I'm working with Global's DAX network, their global radio, to help them with audio adverts in games, so that you can continue playing your game, listening to an advert while continuing to play. So you don't even get interrupted, and you get all the things that you can get as a reward from that. Yeah. So, there's so many sides to this amazing industry, and people are constantly surprised when I say to them, my industry is worth more than Hollywood and Netflix and all the streaming stuff put together. My industry is a global multi-billion-pound industry, or dollar industry, and it doesn't seem to register.
No, and I suppose spreading more awareness of the roles that are available is one of the things that needs to be done. But what do you think we can do to encourage more girls into the industry? Are there some other things to entice them in?
Do more stuff like this, for starters. Have women talking about what is great about the industry and advocating the industry and advocating roles. Another thing that I like to do is I like to mentor people, have more people going out into education, into college education, even younger potentially, and then helping people see what kind of roles are available within the industry. Help them visualize it. And the best way of visualizing is to bring people into your organizations and let them apprentice, let them intern, let them work. I mean, most of my graduate recruits actually come as a result of internships. You know, and it's really interesting because a lot of people who think about PR, my challenge is a lot of people think about PR in that kind of absolutely fabulous, ooh, fashion PR, ooh, beauty PR, ooh, celebrity PR. And you know, yeah, there's merit to those kind of roles and those jobs, but they're very fickle, they're very fey, they don't pay any money, and they're really hard work. Whereas if you get into tech PR, if you get into technology, if you get into games PR, your ticket, your dollar is worth much, much more as an individual. And I'd like people to see that, and girls particularly to see that they can, that, you know, they can increase their own personal value as an asset to companies if they get into tech, if they get into games. Because I have literally interviewed people in fashion PR who've been in fashion PR for 10 years and they're earning less than one of my account executives. And it's crazy. So, you know, we have career progression, we have genuine self-improvement and self-value being worked on. So there's a lot of things that we can do to just keep telling that message.
Yeah. And do you have any advice for those looking to get in? You know, is there anything that you wish you had been told?
I usually think to get in, this is the problem.
Yeah.
I'm usually selling people the idea of getting in. So when I speak to graduates, they're like, I really fancied fashion PR. And you're like, why? Why? Do you want to travel? Fancy going to Montreal, Toronto, San Francisco, Los Angeles? That's where I was last year.
What? It all happens in tech.
It does all happen in tech. And this is the interesting thing. It's this perception. So it's changing that perception. Say tech is sexy. It is actually not full of nerds. It's sexy. It's full of a lot of very intelligent, creative people making a lot of money. I mean, these games are making millions and billions. And, you know, you don't see the likes of Microsoft going and spending billions on Activision if there wasn't a reason for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's all about changing the perception of what that industry is all about. Now, if they want to get in, try and get in through work experience, interning. There's a lot of very open people to bringing people on that way.
Yeah. I suppose the thing when you intern as well, you get to see within a company, you get to see the roles that are available, you know, you haven't committed yourself to anything. As you mentioned earlier, even yourself at uni, when you're an undergrad, it's kind of a time of, you know, figuring out what you want to do and what career route you want to take anyway. There aren't many people at university that know exactly what they want to do. So intern and do work experience and rule things out, you know, without the risk of thinking, oh, I've got to be here for a minimum of a year. That's my first job.
That's so true. And I think it's interesting because when I mentor students in the UK versus students in the US, I feel so sorry for the students in the US because their parents are like on them to choose a vocational degree course. So by the time, you know, they've done 3 years in their vocation, they're expected to go and do that. Whereas I think in Europe, I think we're much more culturally flexible, and yet just get into uni, do your degree. Doesn't have to be what you're going to do, but it shows that you growing up, it shows you're, you know, getting used. And this is an interesting thing as well. I was never really anti people who didn't go to university, and I'm still not. My own husband never went to uni, he went straight into a job. However, I do notice a big difference between people who have been to university and who haven't. And it's usually just in the soft life skills. I think you get a lot of edges knocked off you at university. You learn how to adapt, and you learn what you have to, you learn how to work with people. So
just
now
living with other people is just such a baptism of fire, isn't it? At uni, you've got to get on with people and form relationships and things that you probably wouldn't do when you're still living at home, and then go into the workplace. So you're absolutely right. I definitely thought that university is invaluable for everything else, not just the qualification.
Absolutely. And it also gets you into a discipline, gets you into meeting deadlines, it gets you into a discipline of work. And I think that's really important. But yeah, I do think that, there is so much opportunity there. The other thing I would always say to people is look out for events, look out for shows. There are lots of, for example, in my industry, we have big shows like Gamescom, like GDC, like Pocket Gamer Connect. And we have smaller shows, select shows like Games Forum. These shows can be found, and they do offer student tickets, often like for nothing, just to be behind, to encourage students to come into the industry. So that's that's a tip for people who are listening to come into an industry. Another thing I'd say is to people who, we're seeing a lot of layoffs right now, who have transferable skills, look to take those skills into the games industry. I'd love to see more mums coming back to work to think, okay, I'd like to try a different industry. I'd like to try something else with the skills that I have. Because I think, we can't escape the fact that we're women. We have babies, we have families to look after. We are the carers, whether we have babies or not. We might be looking after parents. And then we have menopauses. And that is something that we've just got to fight to get people to realize that, of our gender, that we have a lot to offer. And just because we have to take time out for some stuff doesn't mean there isn't a brain at the end of it that can't be stimulated and put to great use and be a real contribution. So I'd like to see more women coming back from time off after menopause. I'd like to see more women coming back after time off for having their children and coming into this industry, because I think and I've seen it, I've done it, I've recruited people who have come in from other industries after having children and taken time out, and they've loved it and I had a brilliant time. So
and just realizing how flexible it can be as well for people coming back in. And we interviewed a lady at She Can Code recently who was a teacher, and she said, after I had children, I realized, being a teacher, you have to be present and I have to turn up. And she said it didn't work for me anymore. So she trained on maternity leave to become a developer, and it meant she could work remotely. And it was just a fantastic story of how are more mums not thinking the same way, that you can then work your career around your life balance, and that's exactly what she did. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about those important skills, but we'd already spoken about some of the important skills and coming into the gaming industry. Do you think there are others for a career in gaming?
Do I think certain skills, I mean, what people need is so broad in our industry. You can be an accountant and really get into game economies. You can be and become a CFO of a company and really understand it's almost like running your own little country, because you are setting an economy. Or you can be somebody who's really interested in data and analytics, and understanding the trends that are going. There are so many different applicable skills. I couldn't say one. Bravery, maybe.
Yes,
there's a soft skill that is necessary, because what I found is that people are scared of tech, or they're scared that they think they don't know enough to be able to get into technology, or they think they're an artistic type and not really a scientific type. And my thing is, jump in. You know, you will find that I think I'm an artistic type, and yet, you know, all of the science and everything else and the real nerdy deep and stuff really, really interests me. And I think if you are a communicator like I am, you can take something that's a really deeply technical proposition and be able to translate that for people so they really understand the pure benefits of that proposition. There are so many different skills, I don't know, but I think bravery on the soft skill side of things is just be open, be free, be brave, and just go for it, because you will get rewarded.
Yeah, you're saying there about communicating. I think there are probably not many roles in technology where you're just expected to sit and build a product and not actually communicate to anybody what it does and how it can be used. I think that's such a myth that you would come in, you'd only write lines of codes and sit with your headphones on all day and not talk to anybody. You really do need those communication skills to be able to be successful. You mentioned Kelly earlier. Are there other amazing women shaking up the industry that we should know about? We're going to have Kelly on here at some point in the future, so she's one.
Kelly Vera is definitely one. Liat at a company called Adeo. She is probably the only woman director of product I've seen in the games industry on the sort of in the more sort of in a technical capacity, and she's a real inspiration. She's very pro women in gaming. She came from the business side of things, and she's there now she's created a product which is literally the platform for audio advertising in games. I mentioned it a little bit before. Obviously, it's my mind's on it. I spent an hour talking to her yesterday, literally about how she got into this. And she literally came from a business background, and she did what I said, which is jumped in and really embraced what being a director of product was about, and making she literally created this product. And she is not a developer, but she works with developers. And I said, what do you see your key role as? And she said, being a translator. I translate what the business needs are, and I translate them back to the developer, and then I take from what the developer's feedback and I translate that back to the business, and all the time making sure that she's meeting deadlines, seeing to clients' needs. So she's great. Who else? Patty Toledo. She's an amazing woman in the games industry. Again, very pro women. And she is, you know, she's behind one of the biggest. She helps organize all the Pocket Gamer Connect events. She's worked at various games companies all the way through. Her contact book in games is phenomenal. And always really, you know, all these people that I'm talking about are always really willing to help other women in the games industry. Peggy Ann Saltz, she is a force of nature in mobile tech. She does a lot of content work with all of the biggest mobile and games companies. So there are so many amazing women. I've probably missed a load. Oh, Simay Dink in Turkey, and God willing, everybody is okay in Turkey, and what a horrible time for them. Turkey is an amazing place for a lot of the games companies are all coming out of Turkey now. It's amazing what's happening there. I could go on. There just Harriet Hughes at PlayStack. She's great, and she's ex-EA. She's amazing. She's running a huge publisher. Lots of really amazing women.
You've spoken a little bit about the way that the industry has changed and the way that gaming is changing. Are there any future trends that you see that you think we should know about?
Yeah. So I think the interesting thing that's going to happen in gaming is the next iteration of the internet, which people are calling the metaverse. Everyone has different interpretations of what the metaverse are. Most of that is kind of I don't know, find another word. Most of that is on the risk. Sorry, you're gonna have to edit this bit out.
That's all right.
Most of which is propagated by Meta, and the Facebook through to Meta sort of change, and really Meta is all about VR, because of the investment that they made into Oculus Rift. And metaverse is not about Meta, and it's not about VR and AR, and those can all be contributory technologies. But the way the internet and how it serves us is going is really blockchain is happening, Web3 is happening. It's not going to go away. Cryptocurrency is not going to go away. So you will start to see things like when you're playing games, it's really, you invest a lot into the games that you play. So if you're playing away on Call of Duty or on Fortnite, you're investing your time in the play, but as you invest, you get rewards in the game, whether that be the skin that you're wearing, or whether that be the glasses that you're looking through, whatever, access to secret places that nobody else has. And all that investment comes to naught when you end the game. Yeah. And that's what's going to stop. That's going to stop happening. Soon, all that investment that you put into building up these assets of your weapons or your skins that you're wearing or your special powers will become, in my view, something that you can take with you into other gaming environments and port with you. And the most important part of that is where you start to see brands and internet and gaming all coming together. So this is why we are going to start to see a lot more branded content coming into games. So, and we're seeing it a lot anyway. You see Gucci and Roblox, you see all the different like Yeezys in Fortnite. You see all these different brands coming in and doing their different things. So the convergence of entertainment, brands and games is happening and will not go away. And what I think is really exciting is UGC, user-generated content. So as much as your podcast is called She Can Code, soon it will be We Can Code. Soon it will be we can all generate everything that we want. And UGC will, a bit like, do you remember when this all happened, when we were able to start doing our own podcasts, when we were able to start doing all our own blogs, all our own video logs, all that stuff is user-generated content. This is us using these platforms, which were previously owned by the broadcasters or the big news organizations. The same thing will happen in games, as has happened with broadcast, as has happened with news organizations. Now with games, people are going to start creating their own games. Their personalization will happen in games. So it's honestly, it's the Wild West at the moment in terms of how that's all going to settle down, but that will happen. That's for me the next thing to look out for.
Yeah. And I must ask you, while we've got you on the podcast, do you have a favorite game?
No, I was thinking
too many.
No, I know it sounds really funny, but I try not to. Because if I'd said a favorite game, I have a lot of games companies that I work with, and if I didn't,
you should have said ours.
I would be in trouble. So I love games. Do
you have a type of game that you prefer to play?
Again, I mean, this is the beauty of games, isn't it? You've got your match 3s and your hyper casual games, your casual games you can play. A new one that I'm excited that's coming out is The Sims on Apple Arcade. That will be coming out soon, made by the same people who made SimCity. I'm worried that I'm going to get too addicted to that, but I mean, I've seen the prototypes. It's just beautiful. And then you can look at more kind of, I love Duolingo. I mean, in many ways that's gamified learning, but to me that there's a lot of gaming in that. So, and the old original Zeldas and Network Doom, the old games I can talk about with impunity.
Well, I'm afraid we're already out of time because the conversation has flown by. Yes, so thank you so much, Jackie, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
You too. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. And for everybody listening, as always, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.